we can get stuck thinking there's a certain way we have to help, or I guess we don't want to have a savior complex, but a certain way we have to engage in resistance. And
it should be accessible to everyone, and it shouldn't be this super expensive, complicated thing, because it's just accessibility it limits what art could be. Because if you only think art's only supposed to be shown in galleries, or you have to have high-tech technology and software to make it, you think the stuff you make every day isn't art, when really it is.
But it also points to a form of your own way to, like, I guess, world build. Acting in these minor ways, you can resist slowly, because, like, things like a revolution, they happen constantly, and they happen in minor ways all the time, and it's willingness to resist in these minor ways, like, builds so that you can resist in more active ways as well.
And street art, being the way it is, having it live on the street, living on infrastructure, is some of the most political it can get.
Well, even if people don't agree with it, at least they're thinking about it. At least it makes them think.
So one thing that, like, direct action does, and that like putting an explicit message on a wall does, is like surface that conflict and have like an initial like motivation to resolve it, and to like actually drive forward like the natural progression of change, right? That like needs to happen.
How do we like taint these facades? Taint, like the bridges and the walls and the shops and the businesses with public art that breaks this normalization.
Decolonizing is about property, it's about land. There's power in property, and if the property can't be controlled, then how can the people will stay colonized?
Yeah, and it's pretty inflammatory too, right? Like the public perception of public art is like so, like, it's so strong, right? Both in a positive and a negative way. Like there's people who like really love it, and there's people who really hate it, right? And really see it as like an act of fucking of violence, right? Which is completely ridiculous.
But then that feeling of safety when you're in a place where like it's not only just like tolerated, but it's like accepted and like people and promoted, and it's like really people love it, is so much different than you come back here and you put something up and it's like, see, like I'm walking around the city and I'm seeing people like just stickers, like they've carved out like every single thing is like they're trying to like cover it up and they're trying to erase it from the public eye, and it's so disheartening.
Positively affects the collective, but it doesn't necessarily contribute to the ruling class in this machine of capitalism that they've created. They see these forms of resistance as dangerous to their own agendas. Even these minor things such as postering, and if they can criminalize these minor forms, it can be a deterrence for people to then commit more like greater criminal acts, like it deters them and makes them afraid. But the reality is still that like they've created these structures, but they are structures that were created, like they can also be abolished and formed in a different way, which benefits us all more equally, more equitably.
There's a counter history. There's always an undercommons. There's a commons and an undercommons, right? And the counter history, the undercommons, becomes the public art that is not funded by the state, right? That is not made of steel, of metal, of like durable materials. That it does not cost money. That comes from the limitation of not having access to these spaces, that, you know, then infiltrate these spaces and create this counter history with more ephemeral materials that are suggesting that, you know, history is like comes from multiple perspectives, includes different players, and you know, and then, you know, this history with a big H, these narrative with a big N, come in to dominate and to kind of erase those other histories that are often kind of have been, you know, erased by force, by genocide, by militarized power.
Black and Indigenous and racialized people have like been at the forefront of street art forever. I think it's important to like give people that history and credit for that. It's always been a way of expressing like marginalized opinions, and it really does like change public consciousness. And I think there's like certain images that stick with you, like the fist. People kind of recognize it now. They know what BLM is. Maybe even if they don't read the news, they know what the Palestinian flag looks like. They could probably draw it by heart, which is something that wouldn't have been the case 5 years ago.
Something that's like so direct and visible to all the community, of course is gonna pose a threat, and it always has. Right before there was the internet, there was the lived environment, and and before we had the ability to post on Instagram, and before we had to like fight with Zuckerberg for shadow bans, we had to fight with the police for criminalization. So in the way it's like back to basics, right? Like to the fundamental struggle.
People need a call to action. They need to be invited to care about something that's happening across the world, something that's happening near them. And it's hard to send that invite out. So we have to just put it in front of people's faces.
That is really like their ownership, so-called ownership, their imposition of public property on the land gives them legitimacy, and when people mess with it, it justifies state violence in the form of repression, in the form of police.
Seeing artists leading the charge in activism for Palestine, for Sudan, for the Congo, for like all the injustice here, like the the reason that I was thrown into engaging into these causes is because of that ability to connect emotionally. Like expression of emotion or expression of someone's soul that is left on a place, like imprinted onto a specific place. Like it's this idea that is like imprinted into the real physical reality. I don't know, the realness of that.
Oh, it's so pretty.
This is where I think, art has played a big role in in the heart of the revolution. There's something about art and revolutionary art that circumvents the need, that circumvents or that attempts to again run away from, to be fugitive from these structures of distribution, these structures of censorship. Like, we really need to break out of the walls of academies and art galleries and into the street. And I think this is what resistance is about, right? You have very limited resources, and you have a much more powerful military kind of response that you have to respond to, and you're fearless. You say no. I say no to censorship, and of course not to compare the materially to compare the two situations at all, but formally we can say, we are the people who support the resistance, and they are the people who support genocide, right? And they are extensions of each other.
Okay.
If it's specifically to the message, if it is shedding light on the truth that they are so deliberately trying to hide, that is especially intimidating. People claim impotence when it comes to issues that feel bigger than them, but these messages can encourage people to unite and organize, and that we are stronger together. Because of course we cannot achieve most things alone.